Hi, this is Judy Sedgman again, and this is my third video about the nature and meaning and importance of the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, as discovered by Sydney Banks. And the first one was my New Year's message, in which I kind of talked about what this discovery had meant to me and how my life had changed when I started to see it. The second was about the nature of principles and what they are and how we think about them in life. And the third one was about the way in which the spiritual principles give us the freedom to create, how they make us a part of creation and help us, show us really how we can change and how we create our own experience of life. So in this one, it's funny, Sid used to talk to us a lot and in the early days, and sometimes he'd do a longer talk and he'd say, okay, I've been talking psychological and now I want to talk spiritual. And that's kind of how I feel about this one, although I'm not putting myself in the category of someone who's actually had the Enlightenment experience, but I've been talking about the psychological nature of the principles and how it's affected people in the way they think and how they understand thought and how they understand their thinking. But I'd like to take it one step deeper, if I could, and talk about the fact that these are spiritual principles. They're not laws of this world. They're deeper than that. In the first one, I talked about scientific principles and how they clarify a field and they make everything make sense. And then they open the field to all kinds of new discoveries and opportunities. And that they, once principles are understood, the potential is understood of what that field could create. And that's true. But there is a profound difference between the principles that explain everything and the principles that explain something. So let's say that the principle of gravity, for example, explains the relationship between masses, essentially, explains how matter influences other matter. And that's it. Now, it's very meaningful in astronomy, it's meaningful in architecture, it's meaningful in so many fields of endeavor that once gravity was understood, it's meaningful, and it comes up all the time in physical training, working with or against gravity. And so it's, now that we know about it, it's deepened our understanding of a lot of things in life, but it applies to that specific thing. And the same with the principles of thermodynamics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought are the closest thing I can describe is they are the unifying principles behind life. Although we haven't really all recognized that yet. That's what it seems like to me. But they are the principles that explain creation. All creation. So they explain our ability to recognize and discover other principles, but they also are not discoverable in the same way. They came to Sydney Banks in a moment of enlightenment. Enlightenment happens to people, and it could happen to any one of us at any time. Doesn't take a special person that's seeking something to find enlightenment. Enlightenment is I would say it's a random event of life. But those people who have those experiences see, as Sid said, when he came through that experience, he said that he had seen the nature of what we call God. He had seen the truth about life. Now, Sid was a very simple man. For those of you who don't know the story of Sydney Banks, he was a welder. He was a Scotsman. He had been in the British military. He lived in Canada. And he was married and had children and a perfectly normal life. And back in the 70s, it was very common for people to look for help with their relationships, especially the marriage encounters was a very big thing. There were a lot of people who would go to special weekends, you know, to improve your communication or to deepen your love or to stop fighting or whatever it might be. And he and his wife, he loved his wife dearly, his wife Barb, and he and his wife decided that they'd love to not disagree as often, not fight. So they started signing up for seminars, but Sid would always back out. And then finally he was signing up again, and this was a seminar he backed out of before, and apparently the person recognized his name and said, you know, this is it. If you don't come to this one, we're not going to sign you up again. So they went. And they very quickly discovered that it wasn't very helpful. Essentially, that the people that were teaching it were, you know, like one of the subjects I remember Sid saying, one of the topics that was on the list of things they could go to is how to fight fair. Well, they didn't want to how improve their fighting. They wanted to stop fighting. Nobody was talking about that. But they were in a lovely place, so they decided to spend some time there. And you know, now I'm repeating this story, and I have to say there is a videotape of Sid telling the story called The Experience, which you can easily find on the 3pgc.org website. And if you go there, you can listen to Sid tell his own story. So I'm telling, you know, what I recall. It didn't happen to me, so my description of it is secondhand. And if you really want to hear a deep version of it, please do look up Sid's tape. But you know what happened is he and his wife were just sitting on outside, you know, having a cup of tea instead of going to the meeting, and some other gentleman from the conference came out and sat down with them and said, yeah, I didn't like it either. I decided to come out here and sit for a while. And so they got talking about why they had come, and Sid made the random comment that he was insecure. He said, I just think I'm insecure. And the guy that was sitting with him said, oh, Sid, you're not really insecure. You just think you're insecure. And then he said, well, I'm going to take a walk. And he left. And at that moment, something got triggered in Sid, something awakened in Sid. And he started to have this experience. And I'm not even going to try to describe it. You should listen to him because he had the experience. So when he talks about it, it seems very ordinary and it was real to him. And for me, it's quite amazing because I've never had such an experience. And so I really think it's important that you hear it directly from the source. But at any rate, over the course of a few days, he had just a series of deep, profound, amazing realizations about the nature of life. And when he came through it, he knew that he saw something that was, he didn't even know what to make of it. He knew he saw something that needed to be shared with the world, that could change human suffering, it could eliminate human suffering. People could see this. Now, you know, what I've always found kind of fascinating about that, who knows how many people might have had similar experiences and just kept it to themselves and had a nice life. And I've always had a kind of admiration for Sid because he went through a lot. You know, he wasn't a public speaker. He was kind of a quiet man who just liked his own life and in his own small world that he lived in with his friends and his family. And he wasn't interested in fame or glory or getting out in the world and sharing this, but he was compelled to share it because he saw that it was the secret to finding peace and for human happiness. to end human suffering. He saw that. And he felt like it would be wrong not to share it. But he kind of fumbled his way into sharing. I mean, he started out just talking to little groups of people that he could assemble where he lived. And ultimately it became a global effort. You know, he traveled all over the world and talked to many, many people over the course of his lifetime. He died in 2009. But the truth is that there are still kind of a group of us who heard it first directly from Sid before anybody else in the world had really latched onto it. And we're just woke up. That's all I can say. When you wake up to something that you know it's true, something in you just knows it's true when you hear it. And it's so freeing, so liberating that you think, oh my gosh, people have got to know this. You know, so those of us who started originally with Sid, we were from all different professions, all different walks of life. And we all had our own story, but we just kind of came together and said, okay, somehow we're going to help to share this with the world. And it wasn't associated or affiliated with any particular field of endeavor. I mean, it's taken hold now in two worlds, the world of therapy and the world of coaching. But I was a business person. And when I first learned it, it became intrinsic to my way of doing business. It changed everything about the way I did business. And I could have stayed in that business or trained other business people or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's about human experience. So the first thing I'm going to ask is that when you think about these principles, and now, various websites and books and all kinds of things have come out about it, it's kind of gotten a reputation of being, well, this is about psychotherapy, or this is about coaching. And it's not. It's about all human beings living their life on Earth. And deeper than that, it's about creation itself, about the universe. So it applies across the board to everything. It just so happens that, it's kind of taken hold initially in certain fields of endeavor. But there's no limitation. I mean, Sid has talked to physicists, he's talked to business people, he's talked to people in jail, he's talked to scientists, he's talked to social workers, he's talked to assembled crowds of ragtag people. It doesn't, there's no definition, except if you want to understand life and creation, this is the path to see it. So, it kind of has begun to trouble us a little bit that it's gotten so identified with certain professions. So it was just a technique in that profession. No, it's not. But people in that profession who see the power of it and share it have changed lives. Have helped, they don't personally, they would never say, I've changed a life. I would never say that. But the fact that they're able to share this in a way that people can hear it allows people to change from within. So lives have changed because people could see something they never saw before, just like we did. And that's an important distinction, because this is not a technique, it's not a theory, it's not a practice, it's not it's a way of understanding life. And once you understand it, your understanding leads you to a level of peace and contentment and happiness and creativity and possibility that you may never have considered. It sets you free from a lot of pain that people experience when they think life is coming at them from the outside in. Once you see that life is flowing through you and coming to you from the inside out, you have agency, but you never had it. I mentioned one earlier that when the first course I ever took in psychology, which was just a beginning college course, and I never took any more for years. I have a doctoral degree now, but that was years later. They pretty much taught us that your circumstances create your experience. So we would talk about the effect of poverty on the lives of children, or the effect of bad parenting, the effect of war, or the effect of hunger, or the effect of this, or the effect of that, effect of divorce, the effect of the death of a parent early in life, that kind of thing. So we had this sort of list of external circumstances that affected human psychology in some way. And yet there was no consistency to how. In other words, like, yeah, well, if these things happen to you, it probably disturbs you psychologically, but how you manifest that, we're not too sure. It's not like. And then there were some courses where they actually said it's going to lead to this, this, and this, like poverty leads to these kinds of responses. So it was very complicated, and it was very kind of vague, complicated and vague, because people are not predictable that way. And nobody could explain that. I remember in class asking, well, I know somebody I knew somebody in high school whose father died while we were in 11th grade. And she was very sad to lose her father, but she was a very religious girl, and she believed that he was in heaven, and that was wonderful. And she grieved and then was at peace. And then I knew some other people had lost parents who just couldn't get over it. They couldn't come to peace with it because they didn't have any, they couldn't explain it, and they didn't know where they were, and and it was very painful. So, and the teacher said, well, I can't explain that, everybody's different, but the truth is that, the death of a parent has a psychological impact on people. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't pursue psychology at the time. I thought, well, what the heck do you do with all this? You just make a list of all the things that go wrong with people, and then you talk to them about what's wrong with them. How does that help? No, it's just a common sense response. And I always had a really profound desire to be in service to people, but I didn't know how to do that exactly. My early life was kind of a search for what is a way that I could serve. And I really kind of experimented with a lot of different things before I found the principles and saw how to do that. So it's really important to see that the principles explain everything, but they prescribe nothing. They are not prescriptive, they are descriptive. They describe how creation works. They don't tell creation what to do about it. So, and they are not a recipe for a perfect world. They're a recipe for understanding how to create a nicer world. Understanding that it's within you to see beyond your current thinking about things. It's within, it's within possibility, but it doesn't. Principles don't tell us how to do it or what to do. There is nothing in the understanding of the principles except your own free will and your own profound understanding that I'm the thinker. I am creating my own experience and interpretation of life. And if I don't like my life, I can change. I don't have to change anything inside of myself, anything. Now, coming to peace might lead you to change things, might lead your common sense into saying, I don't know why I'm doing this because it doesn't mean anything, but they don't, the principles just tell you that you'll find your way. You'll find your way. And the path through which we find our way is wisdom. I was doing a webinar just a few days ago, and somebody asked me, well, because my topic was wisdom at that time, and somebody said to me, well, why is wisdom so important? Why do you put so much faith in wisdom? And the answer that occurred to me in the moment was because wisdom is our connection to the divine. And when we say divine, we don't mean a religious figure. Okay, we're not talking about any religion. Religions are the thinking people do about reverence and how we got here and things that are mysterious to us. But we're not talking about any particular way of doing that. We're just saying that there is a spiritual energy, divine energy behind all things, everything in the universe. It has to be. There is that. And that divine energy manifests across the universe in the creation of form, all kinds of forms, stars, planets, black holes, antimatter, worms, bugs, people, elephants, dogs, earthquakes, tides, planets, every manifestation in the universe is the principles at work, these principles at work. So in our world, primarily, they affect us because they describe human psychology and give us freedom to create our own life the way we want to. But we have to look deeper than that to really understand the profundity of this understanding, to understand that it's not limited to human behavior. We're just little bits of a much bigger picture. You might say we're insignificant in the scheme of things, but we're not insignificant in our scheme. So this is great to know this as human beings because it improves our experience of human life. But it's even more profound and beautiful to know it in a universal sense because it gives you peace about being a part of something way, 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 way bigger than any one piece of it. The whole universe. That we're connected. Everything is connected via these principles. Because it's how everything got here. And I know that I was listening to a TED talk one time by an astronomer who said, we've all got stardust in us. And that's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That human beings are on a planet that's in a galaxy that's part of a group of stars that our star is the sun and it supports life. And we breathe in the atmosphere around us and we've all got stardust in us. And that's true. We're part of the universe. And yet we have this gift of a brief experience in the whole history, the billions and billions and billions of years of history of the universe, which is infinite. We don't really know when it started and if it's ever going to end. It could be eternal. We don't know a lot. But while we're here, we can know that we're creating our small experience of it. The universe is not creating us. We're creating our small experience of it, within it. And when you start to realize that, and you get a profound reverence for the divine nature of all things, all created by these divine principles. So, for those of us who really reflected on this in the beginning and spent a lot of time with Sid, who was a very simple man, but he had a deep, 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 deep appreciation for what he had discovered, what he had stumbled into. And yet, he knew it wasn't personal to him. He knew it wasn't personal to any of us. It's just something, it's a wonderful thing to see. But he didn't feel like he was special in any way. As a matter of fact, the only word I've ever heard Sid use to describe himself in relation to his understanding of the principles was lucky. He said, I don't know why it was me. I don't know why it happened to me, but I'm lucky. It's a lucky person to see this. And we all felt we were lucky to begin to see it for ourselves. And the one thing that is also true of Sid is that as he shared the principles with us, he would say, don't listen to my words. Don't listen to my words. I haven't got any choice but to use words. The principles are just words. Listen for the feeling. What listen for the feeling came to mean to me was wake up to the spiritual nature of life. Feel it. Feel that reverence, feel that awe, feel that gratitude for being here. And when you feel it, it really doesn't matter what you do during the day. It's just living in that feeling. That gives us a beautiful life, and we can share it with our family, our friends, the people around us, and we can make with it what we will. But it's not about, that people often think, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to become? And the thing is, you're supposed to be living moment to moment, creating the best life that you can see to do and doing what's in your heart to do. We're only here for a short time. It's really funny. So many people make a big deal about fame and glory and all those things. Sometimes if you're a student of history, you read about people who were extremely important, say in 1200, and you never heard of them until you read about them in history. But at the time, they were part of the rulership of the world. Well, big deal. They're forgotten. The individual is forgotten, but life goes on. And in our brief lifetime, our life is important to us. It's important to the outcome of creation in our time. And that's an important thing to realize. Sydney Banks' dream was to end human suffering. That was his dream. And if you read his books, you'll see that it often refers to that. His hope is to end human suffering. Now, Sydney Banks personally knew that he couldn't end human suffering. The only people that can end human suffering are humans, all humans, who decide not to suffer. And what is suffering? That was a very, very big question for me in the beginning. Well, what does suffering really mean? What causes suffering? What makes people suffer? And you know what? Over time, I realized that the very gifts that we have to create a beautiful life are the same gifts that we use to create suffering. Mind, consciousness, and thought. That we use the divine energy of mind, the divine intelligent energy behind all things, to create personal thoughts and see them as real and important, and therefore suffer if we can't make them work out for us. You know, what is disagreement? Disagreement is two people who think their thoughts are the more important than the others. What is war? War is a group of people willing to kill a whole group of other people because of what they think. They're willing to kill a whole lot of other people because they think they deserve a certain plot of land. You know, what is murder? It's a thought that's that someone has, that if they can destroy certain other people, they'll feel better. Or if they can destroy people and then themselves, they'll go out in a blaze of glory instead of unknown. And it's just thought. Everything is thought. Suffering is the way we think. It's not real. It's what we create from negative, personal, egotistical in the sense that I'm thinking about myself, not about the beauty of sharing this life with all things in the universe. So we have two ways of using our beautiful gift of thought. And one way is to use our intellect. The intellect is the library of everything we know already. So we build our intellect from zero at birth to whatever we know at the end. And everybody's library is different. And the books that everybody likes from that library are different. You know, like I might enjoy nostalgia, and somebody else says, I don't like to think about the past at all, even the good parts. And somebody else might say it's more important to worry about the future. Somebody else might say, just live in the moment, just do your thing. So we all see life from our own perspective, but we use our intellect to figure things out, which is kind of important. Like we remember how to get to the grocery store. We don't have to look at a map every time we leave the house. You know, we remember what time to go to work. We remember what we do. We remember what we've learned. So the intellect is our storehouse. It's our resource. It's a library. But if you have a question that you don't know the answer to, and you go to the library and there's no book about it there, the answer is in the unknown. And the incredible gift we have is we have access to the unknown. It's part of the divine power of mind that is always flowing through us, producing thought, allowing us to produce thought. And when we don't have an existing thought in our intellect, that is the answer to the question we have. We have the capacity to access the wisdom to see something we've never seen before by the power of mind, which is a thought. That's how we get ideas from the unknown. And I remember one day when Sid was talking about inventors, and he was particularly singling out the light bulb as an invention. And he said, can you imagine that everybody's using gas lights and candle lights and you know, light is poor and people's eyesight goes bad, and this person suddenly sees the incandescent bulb. He sees something that's never been seen on the face of the earth before. He sees how to do that. And he experiments and experiments and produces it. And that's wisdom. That's tapping into something that everything that you could know is there somewhere, but you don't have access to it unless you access it by wisdom. And I remember thinking that that's really true, because in my little puny personal experience, I was running a business according to the rules of running a business. You know, I'd been to courses and I knew a lot of business people and I had a structure and I went to a lot of seminars and, you know, learned accounting methods and various things you need to know to run a business and sales techniques. And when I learned the principles, I was early on. I mean, I just saw them just barely. But I was sitting in my breakfast room having coffee one Saturday morning. And I thought, I'm doing this completely the wrong way. I was in the service business, which was being a consultant to medical practices, medical practice management business. And I'm not a doctor, an MD. And I'm not, you know, among the MDs. I'm no specialist. I don't know anything more about surgery than I do about general medicine or anything else. But I knew about how to run that practice. But these are the people, their practice was their life. It was their baby. It was their dream. Who am I to tell them what to do? Who am I to tell them what to do? I just thought, oh my God, no wonder people, they appreciate my advice, but they don't take it. You know, people are paying me to analyze their practice and give them a document about all the things that they could do differently. And they, when I present it, they're very entranced and very intrigued and they're very excited about it. But if I call them 3 months later, they haven't done it. They don't do it unless they hire us to do it, which was another part of our business. Then their heart's not in it. It's like and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is wrong. Now there was nobody in the consulting business at that time that had that thought. Everybody was an expert. If you were running a consulting business, you were considered an expert, and people expected you to have expert opinions. And I changed the entire way I did my business. In a weekend, I just reconstructed the whole thing in my mind. And I went back and talked to my staff about it, and they were very thrilled. So it took all the pressure off them. Now, what did we do differently? Instead of coming across as the expert, the person that could tell them, you know, who to hire or how to fix their filing system or how to organize their office differently or how to solicit patients or where to move to get more closer to their patient base or whatever. We were the people that fostered their hopes and dreams. And when they thought of what they wanted to do differently, we helped them to do it. It's very, very different than telling them what to do. And then when they didn't do it, they had to pay us to do it for them. Now they were still paying us to do it for them, but they were paying us to do what they wanted to do, not what we thought they should do. And often what they wanted to do, because it was their business, their practice, their heart and soul, was something we could have never in a million years thought of. It wouldn't have occurred to us. So we found ourselves doing all these interesting things that were much more exciting and much more challenging than the stuff that we made up to do. But it was a total reversal of business practices in the consulting world as they were known at that time. Total reversal. And people said, you know, oh my gosh, you're so brave, you know, oh, you're doing, I wasn't brave. Once you see something from wisdom out of the blue doesn't exist in your life or in your knowledge, but you see that it's right. When you get a wise thought, you know it. There's something in you goes, oh, yeah, it's right. Even if it's just don't cross the street yet, because somebody's going to run that red light. Any thought you get, that's the thought you need in that moment, comes with a beautiful feeling. It comes with a feeling of being settled, being certain, being comfortable. I knew it was right. I wasn't even worried. I wasn't you know, because it wasn't really my intellect giving me that thought. It was something deeper than that. It came as inspiration. It came as like a revelation, like an inspired, like a dream of a whole new way to do something that just felt so right and easier. And it was easier. And we had a much nicer relationship with our clients because they felt like we were really hearing what they wanted and doing things that they didn't know how to do without help, but they knew they wanted them done. Now, that's what wisdom brings us answers we've never had before, something new. Once we've had it, it becomes part of our intellect. You know, it's stored away. So we don't forget wise thoughts we've had, but once we've had them, then now we know them. Now it's in the known world. So like everybody takes light bulbs or for granted now. Of course they're light bulbs. Nobody ever stops and says, gee, we're so fortunate to have these amazing things that you just turn a switch and they come on and they light the room. I mean, that's not even surprising anymore. That's just part of life. It's become routine. But if somebody, like I was watching a news program the other day where I didn't know this, but apparently there's a substantial effort being made to create airplanes that run on solar power, which makes a lot of sense, given that they fly above the clouds. And there was a test pilot who's been testing airplanes that run on solar power. And somebody said to him, that's really brave of you, you know, to get in a plane and take off, and nobody's ever tried to fly on solar power before, and you don't know if it's going to work till you get in the air. And he said, no, it's just my job. It's the job that I do. I trusted that they knew what they were doing with me, taking the plane. And I thought that's really wonderful, but there's a person that has faith in creation, faith in wisdom. Even though that plane had never taken off until he flew it, didn't know if it was really going to fly. He trusted that it would because he trusted the inspiration behind it and the people that had that inspiration. And that's human progress. That's the progress that we make. You think about the number of people now that are creating ways to save the planet because it's become a desperate situation. But the mind, there is no boundary. The mind, what's possible to come to mind is infinite. We are a vessel for the infinite possibility of creation. Each one of us. And we can use it to create our own little personal thoughts about ourselves and who we are and what's important to us and why we should do this or that. Or we can use it to be open, to see what's up, to see what's new, to see what's possible. And once we know we have that power, it becomes a matter of using your free will, your choice. What do you want to do with your thinking? You can do whatever you want. The principles don't care how you use them. You know, it takes the same energy of mind, thought, and consciousness to create suffering as it does to create beauty, to create peace, to create love, to create harmony, to create incredible things. Now, people might say, well, isn't it kind of a cruel joke then that we have free will and some people create suffering and misery? And not really. I mean, there's no principles that are neutral. They're the operational system behind everything. But what becomes of the use of that system is of a different world. Principles come from the formless. Formless meaning they're not part of anything that gets created. They're the source of creation. They're the energy behind it all. They're the logic of it. But then what becomes of it is of a different world. It's a world of form. Once you form something, there it is. What the principles tell you is that no form is permanent. No form is permanent. Now you might say, well, some things are permanent, like, what about galaxies? Well, if you're an astronomer, you don't see them as very permanent. They just might be billions of years involved in the change, but they change constantly. I remember when I studied geology in college, I loved geology. I took it because it was meeting at a time when I could fit a science in, and science was not my major. So it was the science that met at the time I had a free period. And so I took it because I had to take a science. But I loved it. And the thing I saw from geology was, oh my gosh, that the entire shape of everything on the planet has changed. And the evidence of that change is available to us. And there were continents that are now beneath the ocean. And there were oceans covering what are now continents. And there were mountains that were once under the ocean. And there were deserts that were once fertile. And I was shocked. Just shocked beyond my imagination not to have known that. I just kind of lived in a world in which I drove around and took for granted that this mountain had always been there, and this set of rocks had always been there by the beach. And I never questioned, was it always there? How does it change? In our little lifetime, we don't see that much of it. We'd see volcanoes and things like that, but we don't see the big picture of how amazing change can be. We read about dinosaurs and we know they're extinct, but we don't realize the reason they're extinct is because the comet hit the earth, and then also because of all the change a lot of things are extinct, or a lot of things that used to thrive in one place couldn't thrive there today. So they either moved or they don't exist. But that's all part of the flow of creation, the change, the amazing creativity, universal creativity of mind consciousness. It's not just the human part of it, it's everything. Everything is in motion, everything is changing, everything is operating by this energy. Now, in our particular case, as human beings, it's important to understand this in the context of human psychology, because that gives us the freedom not to take our negative thinking seriously. It gives us the feeling, gives us the realization that you understand life from your feeling, not from the words, not from the deeds, not from the doing. And I remember, I puzzled over that for a long time. Like Sid would say, listen for the feeling. And I thought, we got to listen to see if he's in a good mood. First, I thought, is he in a good mood or a bad mood? Don't listen to him when he's not in a good mood. But that wasn't what he meant. It's when I listened for the feeling in myself that I recognized what he meant. And then you see the feeling in other people, and you can see when they're just caught in negativity, or they're just caught up in their ego, their image of themselves is taken over, and they can't appreciate, they lose their gratitude for what they have. They're always looking for what they don't have. But the feeling of being at peace in the moment is a beautiful, deep feeling. And when you find that feeling, you don't really want to lose it. We all lose it sometimes because we can think anything and thoughts come to mind. But the knowledge of the principle is the true knowledge, the authentic realization of how we create our experience. The realization, I'm not talking about intellect. Oh yeah, sure, thought creates experience. I get that. That's very, it's like, Oh my gosh. Every time a new thought comes to mind, my reality is different. Every time a new thought comes to mind. It's amazing. It's amazing that your reality can change in one thought. And yet we've all had that experience. You know, like everybody I know that's ever raised a child will say, oh yeah, I've had moments when I just wanted to beat her up. And then I realized, oh no, you don't want to. That's just realizing something. It's just like you get mad and you have a mad thought and then you feel terrible and you wake up and go, oh no, I don't go there. It's just common sense. But my whole business reality changed in one cup of coffee. You know, so you might say, because by the time I finished drinking that cup of coffee, I completely revamped my idea about business. My whole relationship with my daughter changed in one moment of realizing the difference between operating from love and operating from your ideas about what it was to be a mother. Your ego. Very tempting to operate from the ego. The ego is very powerful. You're thinking about yourself. But when you go deeper than that, into the deep feeling, to the beautiful feeling that you want to experience in life, wisdom tells you what to do. So I just wanted to share that these principles are not of this world. They're not, they're scientific in the sense like all principles, they simplify and explain everything, but they happen to apply to the universe, not just to a field of endeavor, or not just to a certain thing. They explain where all those things came from. Everything that we know in life, everything that we can ever see, everything that exists came through these principles. It's profound. But once you see that, it gives you a great deal of peace with just human existence. You know, you're fine. So I hope this is helpful because I know there's a lot of curiosity and more and more people in the world that are getting interested in the principles. There's a lot of interpretation going on, of course, as there are with any thought. And you know, I just feel like there's still some of us who kind of learned it directly from Sid, who had the privilege and the time and the sense of wonder, you know, at this. It's now become sort of common, but when we first learned it, it was just so unique and we were just in awe to realize this. In awe, really, I just couldn't believe it. It was like, oh, how could I be so lucky to see this? And then we got luckier even when we learned to share it. So, you know, look for that feeling. Look for the feeling of gratitude and awe and appreciation. Wonder at how powerful our gifts of thought and consciousness are, and the energy of mind that makes it all possible. So I'll be talking to you again soon. Take care.